Hello, everybody. This is Apba Brian at Apba Baseball Classics, bringing to you today a review of the game Fall Classic Baseball, and also a announcement of the next project, and we'll talk about that at the end of the review. I just completed a 1957 season double elimination tournament using the Fall Classic Baseball engine, and that tournament was won by the, not going to say, you have to watch the games. Kind of a surprising winner, and especially a surprising finals and semifinals in the tournament. But the tournament gave me a chance to use Fall Classic Baseball for about 31 games. And I think I'm now familiar with it. I can talk about what I like and what I don't like about it. It's not a 50-50 engine like you might find in a game like Stratomatic. It is close to Apba, it is close to Stratomatic, but it is entirely different, and it gives some elements into the game that I like that improve upon Apba and Stratomatic. First of all, what I like about the game. Let's start with the product itself. The cards are fantastic. The cards are great quality. They're on a very heavy card stock with a glossy feel to the cards. I like all the information that's packed on the cards. You get the player's stats, especially the pitcher stats in hitting. You'll get 2 cards for pitchers. You get the pitcher's card that he pitches with. You get his batting card, which also includes his fielding abilities. But you get the pitcher's hitting stats, and I like that. Now, beyond the stats, another thing I like is you get a PDF. You buy the game, they send you a PDF of the teams. And so you've always got them. If you want to print them off yourself or print additional teams, you can do so. I ordered the already printed teams because of the price of ink. I'm just not too crazy about printing off whole seasons. But you can play the game by writing the defensive stats on your score sheet, so you have them right there. Or you can bring up a team's defensive page, and I like that they show the defensive stats and their usage. How many times, for example, Pee Wee Reese played third base for the 57 Dodgers. He played 65 times. We don't get that on the card, but you can see that on the computer on the PDF that they send you, their defensive page. So that's one way to play the game. You can play the game with the cards out and that defensive page handy on your laptop. The one thing about the stats that are printed on cards, I don't know why they don't include the ERA of the pitchers on there. You get their whip, you get their innings and other stats, pretty much everything else. You don't get their earned run average, and I'm a little surprised about that. I think they could make room for that. Now, when you order the cards and you separate the cards, I also ordered a fast action deck. There's pluses or minuses on the fast action deck. You can play the game without the charts. There's different ways, kind of like a payoff pitch baseball. There's different ways you can play the game, and that's according to personal preference, how big a footprint you want the game to have on your table. You could just use the cards and the fast action cards and play a game that way, score sheet. With the fast action cards, that will cover about 90% of the results because they include, you don't even need dice, but I always like to roll the dice. They have an interesting way to give you random numbers for dice rolls. They break it down to the innings. I like that, but I didn't really use that. What the fast action cards do, they give you the out results. They give you the base hits, where the base hits go to, where base runners go to. They give you the defensive charts, which is a 51, 52, or 53 roll. 51 and 2 are air charts, and 3 is a fielder's range chart. They give you a 54 chart on the back of the card, and that covers the wild pitches, pass balls, and unusual plays. Sometimes the charts will refer you to an exotic air chart, but that's kind of rare. Maybe the last game I played, I don't think I had to use the exotic air chart one time. So about on average, when I use the fast action cards, I would have to refer to another chart from the game, maybe a couple times a game only. Now, in the fast action cards, if you're a fast action deck, included in that deck are 4 cards that are really handy, the size of the player cards, that govern the hit and run plays, the stolen bases, bunting, injury chart, more things from the 54 chart, suicide squeeze chart, which I was looking for a chance to do that. Did it once, and I think the player popped out and turned into a double play. Pick off attempts, your jump charts for stealing bases, injury charts. Now, it's kind of strange. I played 31 games, and I didn't have any injuries. And hopefully the Royals will play 2021 and go through the first 31 games and nobody gets hurt. But that's kind of doesn't happen. Usually people get hurt. So that would be one downside. But I like these little charts. The size of the card are very handy to keep there. They also give you with the teams the ballpark chart. When you roll a 46, they'll take you to the ballpark card. And so different aspects come into play of different stadiums that you use. If you're playing in Yankee Stadium and you're a left-handed batter, you're going to have a 1 in 3 chance to hit a home run at the right field, and just a 1 out of 20 chance on that ballpark card to hit one in the right field. It's showing it is harder to hit a home run to right in Yankee Stadium in 1957. So I like getting the stadiums involved. It's very easy. I like the way, let's talk about the game engine and the play now. I like the way, back to these strategy charts, I love the base stealing, the way they handle that. One criticism of the base stealing, I thought you could do an automatic base stealing like they do in Apba, which I did on a couple of games, but that's not one of my favorite parts of Apba, and would not be one of my favorite parts of Ball Classic. You could play manager controls base stealing, and that's the way I played it. You roll for off the batter's card for a jump, and off the pitcher's card for a jump. There might be a pickoff throw at first involved with that. And if he gets a jump, the batters have an SBS number. And there was one thing a little weird about that. There were some players that had maybe just 2 or 3 steals, like 2 for 2 in stealing. They'd have a success rating 1 to 20. In other words, you can't throw them out. Unless your catcher is above average throwing. And my complaint is, another associated complaint with the stolen base is that the catcher only takes 2 off a 20 die roll in the SBS chance if he has a strong arm. If he has a weak arm, he adds 2, and I don't think that's enough difference, because there are some catchers who, literally throw out half the base stealers, and that would not reflect that in the actual gameplay. So I think that adjustment has to be more severe. But you can fix that with home rules like anything else, and I would. But over and above, I like the steal system. I really love the sacrifice bunt system that requires 2 die rolls with 6-sided die. And the first die roll tells you if he gets the ball down. Each batter is rated for a success rate. Say it's 1 to 4. If he rolls a 1 to 4, he gets the bunt down. And also the number will tell you what direction the bunt goes and who fields it. So then you roll the ball, the 6-sided dice again, and it has to be within 1 to 4 to be a successful sacrifice. I like that way of in solving sacrifice bunts. I think it's very realistic and just easy and smooth. Better than Appa's and Strat's basic game. I never play Appa Master, so I can't compare it with Appa Master. They have a hit and run chart that's similar to Stratomatic, only it adds a couple of things on certain die rolls. How the dice come up could bring you a more specific play, but you had the 2 6 dice. You roll the 2 6-sided dice, add them together like Stratomatic to get the result. And players are rated A to C on how good they are in hit and run plays. So you can use like the A ones. For example, I had a Pee Wee Reese is an A hit and run, but he's only 224 hitter. Pretty sure if you did the math on the hit and run chart, that the die rolls there would give you probably a higher batting average. Him being an A, so you can help him, which in real life help. Hit and run does help hitters who can do it because it opens up the infield. So I think that's realistic. I do like the hit and run chart. Didn't get to use the injury chart, as I mentioned before, and I think that's a little strange. The wild pitch chart needs the 54 play, which covers wild pitches. They don't really give you a breakdown between wild pitches and fast balls, which would actually be like an error on a catcher. I think some home rules might be required there to sharpen that up a little bit. And I didn't get into too many, in the 30 games, I didn't get into very many unusual plays. And I think in baseball, you got to get one really weird thing at least once every game or two. I mean, one really weird thing happens in baseball. So I'm not sure they reflected that quite enough in Fall Classics. Now let's talk about the game engine itself. You have 2 cards. You refer to the batter's card first. About half the numbers are blank, and when you hit a blank, you move over to the pitcher's card, and that pitcher will then give you the play result off the same number. And I'm okay with that game engine. It's a little less smooth if you're broadcasting games on YouTube, but most of you are not broadcasting games on YouTube. You're just playing. And one plus about it is that if there's nobody on base, who cares what the out is? You can just roll the dice again and go to the next play and play the game more quickly. Probably play a game in less than 20 minutes by not even looking at what the outs are, unless you have to if there's runners on base. There's a system that you can be used as, I don't know if I mentioned already or not, but the system for determining the outs and hits, where they go and what the base runners do, have more than one system in Fall Classic baseball. There's an easy chart, there's a more difficult chart, and then there's a set of Apba style charts for base runners situations. You got 8 charts for base runner situation. Base is empty, runner on first, runner on second. And so like Apba, you have to keep switching between those charts every time you roll the dice. I never use that because that's what I do in Apba all the time. So I didn't use that in Fall Classic. I used their quick out chart. And there's actually 3 varieties that come in the game. 2 are very similar, and one's a little more detailed and a little more complicated. And one complaint about the Fall Classic game on the detailed one, I really had to think about how to apply some of their base runner advance results on plays, and because it wasn't readily apparent what the symbols meant, and it was a little bit difficult looking them up in the instructions. So I'm kind of a person who likes to have, and this is just personal preference, but I like to have my ducks in a row before I do something. So when I sit down to play a game, I'd like to have everything in my head that could happen and not have to look things up. So in Fall Classic, you may have to end up looking up some things if you're using that more complicated quick outs chart. And even the fast action cards Those were pretty self-explanatory. One thing I was confused about in the rules on when you're running on outfielders' arms, outfielders are rated for strong, average, or weak arms, and then they have a number after them. And I don't think it was really clear in the rules of whether you, because some plays refer you to an S, A, or W outfielder arm, but they also have a number which is their assist rating. For example, if an outfielder is a A3, rather than use the A number, you I think we use the assist number, and 1 through 3, the base runner would be out. And you had some that were average arms that had 0. So the base runner has no chance of being out, and he gets the extra base. That's a little confusing to me because if he has an average arm, I would think he at least has a chance to throw a runner out. Or there were some S6s where the batter has no chance whatsoever to advance to third from second, for example, on a single right field. And so don't try it. And I think that's a little bit too far on the edge there. Maybe 1 to 5, get him out. But in a desperate situation like the 2014 World Series, they ended with Alex Gordon at third base on a ball that he could have gone for home and he could have scored, which would change Game 7 of the 2014 World Series with the Giants. He didn't try to score. Most people say that he would have been out, but it would have taken, I'm not too sure about that because I know I'm getting a little bit off chart here, but I don't think the Crawford, the shortstop for the Giants, was in a terrific position to make that relay throw. And it would have taken a good throw, and it would have been, I think it would have been a close play. So I think he should have went myself. And that should be reflected in Fall Classic games. You shouldn't have any outfielders that are 1 to 6 that they throw out every runner who advances the base. So that's a little too draconian. It's a little too severe also in Fall Classic baseball when a pitcher hits his fatigue point. Overall, I like the fatigue point. They're rated for both starting and relieving. And then if they reach the fatigue point, one bad thing happens, then they go to what is called a column D. And column D is all hits and walks. If it goes to the pitcher's card, not every roll goes to the pitcher card, but the ones that do go to column D if a pitcher is tired, and that means it's either going to be a hit or a walk, and that's, I think, a little bit too draconian. To me, it makes more sense, and you can do this with the home rules, that if you have a pitcher who's using his A stuff, that when he gets tired, just knock him down one column, send him to a B or C rather than a D. If he's had his bad stuff and he's tired, then go to the D column. So I think that was a little bit draconian, but overall, I like that system. And here's another thing that Fall Classic adds over and above other baseball games on the market. It will test your pitcher warm-up time, his bullpen. You do a separate 20-sided die roll to check his stuff that he brings out of the bullpen, whether it's his best stuff, which is an A column, or his average stuff, which is B column, or his worst stuff, and he doesn't have it that day, his C column. Now, in actual results on the cards, they're not real severe. I've had some pitchers get through games just fine on their C column. But I do like that aspect. And I think that's a big improvement over Apba and Stratomatic, because that is a real thing in baseball. My youngest daughter was a softball pitcher all of her life and up through high school. She could have pitched in college, but she wanted to go to a Division I school for her nursing training, but she could have pitched at a small school. She was recruited. But, the warm-up time is very important. You have to get command of all your pitches before you go out there. You have to break a sweat and get going. And my youngest daughter, her name is Suzanne, and sometimes You know, her warm-ups were not taken seriously enough. And there was one time I remember in a tournament, I told her they're going to score off you in the first run, and it's going to be ugly because of her warm-up, the way she warmed up. And that's where she learned that she needed to take it more seriously because they did score off her in the first inning, and it was not pretty. So, by the way, she was a very good pitcher. One time in her high school career, she won 13 straight games and was pretty dominant. But I learned from that experience that the warm-up bullpen does have an effect on the game. Sometimes they have their best stuff, and you have to call the game accordingly. Sometimes they have their worst stuff, and you have to call that game accordingly. There are times her weakest pitch was a rise ball. She had the best changeup probably in the city, and that's other coaches said that. And she had above average fastball. But there were some games where she never used her rise ball because that was her weakest pitch. But there are some other days where the rise ball was, kind of okay. So she used it sometimes. But you get that out of the bullpen sessions and make your determinations there, and it does affect the game. So I think that's a terrific addition to tabletop baseball gaming that Fall Classic brings. All right. Overall, like I said, I love Fall Classic baseball. I'm still an Apba baseball guy, and we're going to go back to Apba next time for the next project. But I can tell you I would not hesitate to buy another season of Fall Classic baseball. That's another plus I like about Fall Classic baseball. There's lots of seasons available, more than you can get nowadays with Stratomatic. You can still get them all, I think, with Appa, but Fall Classic has a terrific selection. Now, when you order, I also like that you get lots of players. Each Fall Classic team had, in the middle 30s, about 33 to 35 players. And there'll be more cards than that because they give you, excuse me, hitters cards with the pitchers also. Appa has their hitting results on the cards already, and I like that. Strat, I totally don't like. Generic cards batting for the pitcher. If I'm playing Stratomatic, I normally play DHs, and I'm not a DH guy. I prefer not having a DH. But as I started to say, I would not hesitate to order another season of Fall Classic baseball when the mood strikes, and likely will sometime in the future. But next project is going to be Appa. So I like these games. My 4 favorite games are Appa. I like Fall Classic. I like Pale Pitch Baseball. I like Stratomatic. I still put Appa on top. I am Appa Brian. I've played it for 50 years, and I'm still an Appa guy. But I think these other games add a lot to the hobby and are well worth being there and well worth supporting and playing. Overall realism of the game, I should say something about that. I think I think all these games are realistic. I was concerned about the number of runs. I had some pretty high scoring games and not very many low scoring games. So I'm wondering if there's a little extra offense involved, but when you only play 30 games, you can have stretches like that. So I can't really say that you score too many runs in the game. Again, about the only thing, not enough injuries. The walks, I think, are realistic. Numbers of walks were good, and also the errors. Most of the games had, 1 or 2 errors. There may have been a little bit more than that in the 50s, but I had one game where there were 7 errors. One team had 4 and the other team had 3, and that was kind of unusual. But again, I think they have the errors depicted and the walks depicted at very realistic ratios. Wondering about the home runs, maybe a little too many home runs, but I'm not sure about that either. Originally on another channel, they were playing payoff pitch baseball. So I had some questions about the realism of payoff pitch baseball when the 1960 Orioles, lost 3 games, 3 straight games. This is another channel, to the Kansas City or the Kansas City Royals in '69. I think the Royals only beat the '69 Orioles maybe once out of 13 times, something like that. That was bad. And I saw some of those games in person, and you mean it just looked like the A's had no chance against the '69 Orioles. And to see Impale pitch the Royals sweep a series with the Orioles, 1969, I was kind of taken back by that. I was wondering how realistic could this game be? So it went quite a while before I bought any playoff pitch seasons. But then when I bought the season and played it, I bought the 1964 season and played it, and I think it is very realistic. So I can say, yeah, playoff pitch is a very realistic game. Fall Classic, I say, is a very realistic game. Apba is very realistic. And I think Stratomatic is. The only thing I have a problem with the 50/50 engine and Stratomatic is I think within seasons, when you play teams within seasons with Strat, I think that's extremely realistic. Maybe the top of the line. But when you start mixing teams, especially from different seasons and playing them, I do have some questions about that. Played a Strat tournament one time with 64 championship teams, and I discovered that, for example, the 67 Red Sox, Yastrzemski was about the only 300 hitter in 1967 American League. And for him to hit 300 in 1967, they really had to beef up that card offensively for him to hit it. So now when he's playing teams of other eras, if you put him against the 31 A's, when a lot of players hit 300, their cards are different. He's going to be like hitting unbelievable totals. I mean, he looked like Superman in that tournament. So I do have a problem with the 50/50 engine for that reason. When you're playing different eras of teams, I think possibly Strat has, new sets. This was 40 years ago when I did that. They made new sets, and maybe I've taken that into account. So I'm not going to ding them too much on that, but that's a question that I had for many, many years about Stratomatic. But all these games are realistic, and I do believe Fall Classic is realistic, and I think the more I play it, the more realistic it even seems. If you want to know how realistic I think Apba is, watch a game I played last year on my tournament, on my channel, the third game of the 1951 playoffs between the Brooklyn Dodgers and the 1951 Giants. That was eerily realistic. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Fall Classic Baseball. Just some random thoughts. Now let's talk about the next project. Just recently, Major League Baseball has decided to include the Negro Leagues into the official statistics, and considering the Negro Leagues, the leagues from 1920 to 1948 as officially Major League teams. And often heard, not recently, but years go by, sometimes people will talk about the Negro Leagues as being like about AAA level baseball. I never believed that. I've always believed that they were major league quality players. And that's because when they got to the major league starting in 1947, most of the black stars that played in the white major leagues performed very, very well. I think 8 of 10 rookies of the years were African American players, MVP players. Maybe 8 of the first 11 after integration were MVP players. They won most of the All-Star teams games. National League had most of the African American players. It took the American League 12 years to integrate, ending with Pumpsie Green being signed to play with the Red Sox in 1960. But they were winning all the All-Star games. And a lot of the National League players referred to the American League as the retirement league. So they did well when they did get into the major leagues, and they didn't all of a sudden become good players in 1947. They were great players even before that. As I've read about barnstorming games, it is said that Negro League teams won about two-thirds of the games. Years ago, I thought, well, maybe they're more motivated. No, they were just as good of players as the white major league teams. Um, the Negro League teams, when they barnstormed, they barnstormed quite a bit because they had to pay. In the 20s, their leagues had to pay white owners for the usage of the ballparks as a 10% fee in those games. To make up for that, they did a lot of barnstorming. So in the 20s, about two-thirds of their games were barnstorming games, and only about a third of them through a season were official league games. It's the official league game stats that are going to be included in major league stats, but they made more money barnstorming, and they also beat the white teams quite a bit. First 3 years, they played actual white teams, but Judge Lyons ruled against that and said that no white teams playing black teams could have more than 3 players from the same team. He was embarrassed because they were losing, and that changed the barnstorming. But um, the white players knew the black players could play just as well. So it is. I never believed it's true that the Negro leagues were AAA only. They were major league teams. You might look back on the other end of the spectrum and wonder if the white teams were AAA because they didn't have all the best players. When they looked back and came to decisions as to what leagues are major leagues and what leagues are not major leagues, their first consideration is, are all the best players playing in that league? And you can't say that all the best players from 1920 to 1948, or actually from before that to 1948, were playing in the white major leagues. Many of the best players were barred. So next project is going to combine the two. We're going to play the Negro Leagues champions against the world champion white teams. The first series is going to be the Birmingham Black Barons against the Cleveland Indians from 1948. And we may go down the line. I don't know if we'll play every year, but it's going to be series like the Newark Eagles and St. Louis Cardinals at 46. This picture here is the 46 Cardinals. 1945, the Cleveland Buckeyes against the 45 Detroit Tigers. The Kansas City Monarchs in 42 against the St. Louis Cardinals in 42. Were the Cardinals world champions? I think they were. I've got the Yankees or the Cardinals, either one. 38 Homestead Grays against the New York Yankees. The 35 Pittsburgh Crawfords and the 35 Detroit Tigers. I don't have the 35 Detroit Tigers, so we can't do that one. Or maybe I can get them between now and then. 33 Chicago Americans. Were they as good as the 1933 New York Giants? Homestead Grays and St. Louis Cardinals in 1930, or St. Louis Stars and Philadelphia Athletics. I think these will all be competitive in great series. The Negro League teams, they only had about 16 players. Pitching staffs were not as deep. So we'll see how that plays out. These will be 7-game series. 4 out of 7 will claim the championship. Let's find out who the real champions are between 1920 and 1948. And I may not play all those, but I might play some before. Because there were some very strong Negro League teams. 1913 New York Lincoln Giants, 1910 Leland Giants, 1916 I think the Indianapolis ABCs were the best Negro League team in 1916. So I might want to include those teams, match them up with the Brooklyn Robins, see how that series goes. So I'm looking for a lot of entertaining baseball. Love the style of play in the Negro Leagues. love this, the stars, pre-war stars of the white leagues. I think there's going to be a lot of good baseball. Join us for these Ultimate World Championship Series on Appa Baseball Classics.